Hey, I'm back. I'm doing another early morning Sabbath edification. Haven't done one in a while, but I just want to do one. And first and foremost, I want to say Shabbat Shalom to everybody keeping the Sabbath today. Today is the 15th day of the 6th biblical month. Today is so-called Sunday, September 7th. 2025, and I just want to do a quick video on the consistency of the calendar and show that according to scripture that the 15th day of every month is a full moon and it is a Sabbath according to scripture. So I just want to do a quick edification and just go into scripture and bring out some truth for those that have ears to hear and eyes to see. So I just want to start at Deuteronomy 16:16. And it says, 3 times in a year shall all males appear before Yahuwah thy Elor in a place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before Yahuwah empty. So these is talking about the 3 annual feasts. And I started here because I want to make a point of 2 specific feasts, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which takes place in the month of Abib, which is the spring, and it is on the 15th day, and as well as the Feast of Tabernacles, which is exactly 6 months later, and also takes place on the 15th day in its respective month, which is the 7th biblical month. So I just want to start here. I want to magnify that because, like I said, today is the 15th day of the 6th biblical month, and I'm going to show in scripture the consistency of the Sabbath and consistency, more importantly, of the moon, because the scripture says from the moon is a sign of feast. So I just want to show the consistency of that and show, and without a doubt in scripture, that the Most High, in fact, gave us the luminaries, which is the sun, the moon, and the stars, which is his calendar in Genesis 1:14, but specifically the moon, that he created it for Sabbath days, listed in Leviticus 23, and to include the weekly Sabbath. So I started at Deuteronomy 16:16, and again it says, 3 times in a year shall all males appear before Yahuwah thy Elor in a place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before Yahuwah empty. So I want to go to Enoch chapter 77, and I'm going to get verse 6 and verse 7. And it says, in 14 days, the whole of its light is completed. So what it's saying is saying that the sun pours light into the moon up until the 14th day. Once the light is completely poured into the moon on the 15th day, it becomes the full moon. Verse 7 says, by 3 quintuplets light is poured into it until in 15 days his light is completed. According to the signs of the year, it has 3 quintuplets. So this is why I started at Deuteronomy 16:16, because it says the signs of the year. So those are the 3 feasts that take place annually, but specifically the 2 feasts that take place on the 15th day is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, as well as the Feast of Tabernacles, right? So I just wanted to get that real quick. And I'm going to go into scripture, and I'm going to show the consistency of the calendar, and show that these feasts take place on the 15th day, and show that every month, in fact, is the 15th day is confirmed under a full moon, right? So so let me pick it up at Leviticus 23. And I'll get started verse 4 through 6. Leviticus 23 says, well, I'm going to give verse 1 and 2 first. It says, and Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of Yahuwah, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocation, even these are my feasts. So we know that all of the feasts that we are commanded to keep is outlined in Leviticus 23 to include the weekly Sabbath. So we've been taught that it's 7 feasts here, when in fact there's 8 feasts, because the very first one listed here is the weekly Sabbath, right? So it says, verse 4 again reiterates, it says, these are the feasts of Yahuwah, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. So when we go into the Strong's Concordance, under Strong's Concordance 4150, which is the appointed times, that word feast and seasons both mean appointed times. So what this is telling us is that all of the feasts listed in Leviticus 23 are determined by the moon. So I just want to get a quick precept. Psalms 104. Psalms 104 and verse 19. And it says, he appointed the moon for seasons, the sun knows it's going down. So again, when you go into the Strong's Concordance, that season there is Strong's Concordance 4150, which means appointed times. So the calendar of the Most High is a Luni-Solar calendar when we go back into Genesis 1:14. So I just want to make a point of that. So it says, Leviticus 23 and verse 4, these are the feasts of Yahuwah, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their season. Verse 5, in the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahuwah's Passover. So we know that the Passover every year is in the month of Abib, which is the 14th day. Verse 6 says, and on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahuwah. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. So this is showing right here that the feast of unleavened bread takes place on the 15th day, which is a Sabbath, which is confirmed under the moon, right? So Luke 6 and 1 tells us, Luke 6 and 1 tells us, and it came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first, that he went through the cornfields, and his disciples plucked the ears of corn and did eat, rubbing them in their hands. So the second Sabbath after the first. So the very first feast, the very first Sabbath of every biblical month is the 8th day. And like we say all the time, the Sabbaths are always 8, 15, 22, and 29. So what it's saying here is the second Sabbath after the first. So the second Sabbath after the first Sabbath of every biblical month is always the 15th day, which is confirmed by a full moon. So this is what this is telling us, right? So we see in the first month, which is the month of Abib, we see the 15th day is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So I just want to pick it up and get the second month and show the consistency of the calendar and show that these dates are always the same every month, every year. They never change. And it makes perfect sense because just as our birthday is always the same date, right? So these are annual feasts, and these are set feasts. Let me get that too. Second Chronicles, because these are set feasts, meaning that they always take place on the same date every year. It never changes, and it makes perfect sense because the scriptures tell us that the new moon day is the first day of every biblical month. So if new moon day is numerically the first day, then it only makes sense that these feasts and these Sabbaths and these dates will always be the same as well. Second Chronicles 31 and 3. And it reads, he appointed also the king's portion of his substance for the burnt offerings, to wit, for the morning and evening burnt offerings, and the burnt offerings of the Sabbaths, and for the new moons, and for the set feasts, as is written in the law of Yahuwah. So right here is telling us about the morning and the evening. And that is the 12 hours of light called day, as Hamashiach said in John 11 and verse 9. But it says, and it's telling us that there's a morning and an evening on the Sabbath, as well as the new moon and the set feast, as it is written in the law of Yahuwah. So the set feast, all of the feasts begin in the morning at the rising of the sun, and they go for the 12 hours of light called day. When the evening comes, which simply means sunset, all of the feast days are over. So this is what this is saying, and it's referring to them as set feasts. So like I said, just as our birthdays is always the same date, these feasts are always the same month, always the same dates every year, year in, year out. They never change. These are set feasts, right? So I've already showed in the first month, which is the month of Abib, that the 15th is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So I just want to show the consistency of it. I'm going to go back to 2 Chronicles verse 30. Chapter 30, rather. I'm going to pick it up at verse 1 and 2. And it says, and Hezekiah sent to all Israel and Judah, and wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh, that they should come to the house of Yahuwah at Jerusalem to keep the Passover unto Yahuwah, Allur of Israel. For the king had taken counsel, and his princes and all the congregation of Jerusalem, to keep the Passover in the 2nd month. So this is talking about the 2nd month. So King Hezekiah is sending out a letter to Judah as well as Ephraim, meaning the southern and the northern kingdom, bringing them together that they would keep the feast together. So it says specifically right here in verse 2, to keep the Passover in the 2nd month, right? So I'm going to drop down in context to pick it up at verse 13. And it says, and there, talking about in Jerusalem, assembled at, well, it says, and there assembled at Jerusalem much people to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread in the 2nd month, a very great congregation. So we see this is the 2nd month, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread is on the 15th day, right? So let me get the precept for that. Leviticus 23, and go back to that. It says, and in the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread unto Yahuwah. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. So this is showing right here the consistency of the first month being unleavened bread, which takes place in the month of Abib, and now we're seeing right here in the 2nd month the same thing, where the Feast of Unleavened Bread is being kept in the 2nd month, also on the 15th day, right? So I'm going to show the 3rd month right now. Exodus 19, and I'll pick it up at verse 1. Exodus 19 and verse 1. It says, in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were going forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. So right here it's talking about the 3rd month, and it says that that the children of Israel had gone forth out of the land of Egypt the same day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. So it says same day. So by definition, same means identical, not different. So when it says that they came into the wilderness of Sinai on the same day, it's referencing the day that they left out of Egypt, right? So scripture interprets itself. So let's see what day they actually left out of Egypt on. So I'm going to pick it up at Numbers 33. Numbers 33 and verse 3. Because scripture interprets itself. There's no need for us to ever make the scripture have a meaning, because the scripture says, 1 Peter 1 and 20 said there's no scripture of private interpretation. So it's never where we can isolate one scripture and give it a meaning. Every scripture that's in the Bible is in there for a specific meaning, and it's in context. So again, Exodus 19 and 1 says, in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were going forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. So let's see what day they left out of Egypt, because it says it's the same day that they arrived in Mount Sinai. So this is Numbers 33 and verse, I'm going to start at verse 1 through 3. These are the journeys of the children of Israel, which went forth out of the land of Egypt, with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. And Moses wrote their goings out according to the journeys by the commandment of Yahuwah. And these are their journeys according to their goings out. Verse 3. And they departed from Ramesses in the 1st month, on the 15th day of the 1st month, on the morrow after the Passover. The children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of the Egyptians. So when it says on the morrow after the Passover, well, the Passover being the 14th day, the morrow after being the 15th day, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So when Exodus chapter 19 and verse 1 says, in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were going forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. So this is showing that the 15th day is also the 3rd month. So this is what this is showing. So this is the consistency of the calendar, showing that the 15th day is being seen in Scripture for the 1st month, which is the month of Abib. We see the 2nd month under King Hezekiah, when he's calling the northern and the southern kingdom to come together for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is on the 15th month of the 2nd month, the 15th day of the 2nd month. And now we see the Scripture comparing when they came into the Mount Sinai. This is where they received the law, statutes, and commandments, right? So I just want to show that too, to just get a second witness on that. Jubilees chapter 1. Jubilees chapter 1 and verse 1. It says, and it came to pass in the 1st year of the exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt, in the 3rd month, on the 16th day of the month, that Yahuwah spake to Moses, saying, come up to me on the mount, and I will give thee 2 tables of stone of the law of the commandment which I have written, that thou may teach them. So this is where they came into the wilderness into Mount Sinai and received the word, right? So that's just showing and confirming that they got there on the 15th day, which is under the full moon. So this is when they traveled, because, for example, just like when they left out of Egypt, they left out on the 15th day, just as Numbers 33 said, but they left out at sundown, which was at evening, which is simply sundown. And this is when they left out. And I'll show this real quick, just to make a point of that. Exodus chapter 12. And this is a second witness to the Numbers 33, which says they left out on the morrow after Passover, which was the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Exodus chapter 12. Exodus chapter 12 and verse 41. I'll start there. It says, and it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self same day, it came to pass that all of the hosts of Yahuwah went out from the land of Egypt. Verse 42 said, it is a night to be much observed unto Yahuwah for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of Yahuwah to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generation. So it's telling us that they came out a specific night. When it says self-same, it's talking about a specific night. So I'm going to jump over to verse 51. It says, and it came to pass in the self-same day that Yahuwah did bring the children out of Egypt by night, did bring them out of the land of Egypt by their armies. So it's talking about the self-same day, and you see it's saying it's referring to a night, because evening simply means sunset, which is immediately followed by 12 hours of darkness called night. And to make a point of that is that when I go back to Numbers 33 and 3, it says specifically that they left out on the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So if in fact, if the evening is the starting point of a new day, then this scripture would not make any sense. So Numbers 33 and 3 specifically says, and they departed from Ramesses in the 1st month, on the 15th day of the 1st month, on the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. So when it says that this is a night to be much observed, the children of Israel left out of Egypt on the 15th day at night, meaning the 12 hours of darkness called night, just as Genesis 1 and 5 says. And this is just confirmation that the 15th day is under a full moon, because this is when they left out, right? So with the fact that I just showed the 15th day is the first month of Abib, the second month was under Hezekiah, and then I showed also that the third month, as far as Exodus 19 is concerned, when they arrived into Mount Sinai, was the 15th day. Then we would also have to conclude that the fourth month as well as the fifth month, the 15th day of those particular months, are also under the full moons, the 15th day of those particular months as well. So with that being said, like I said, today is so-called September 7th, Sunday, 2025, and this is according to the calendar of the Most High, which is a Luni-Solar calendar, Genesis 1:14. Today is the second Sabbath after the first, being the 15th day. So this is just showing a 6-month period that the 15th day is consistent with the moon being on the 15th day. So Psalms 89 and verse 37, you want to get that. Psalms 89 and verse 37, and it says, "It shall be established forever as the moon, and as a faithful witness in heaven." Salah. So the moon is a faithful witness. So every time that we see the full moon, that is telling us that it is the 15th day of every biblical month, right? Psalms 19. Let me get this. Psalms 19. Psalms 19 and verse 1, it says, "The heavens declare the glory of Yahuwah, and the firmament show forth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where the voice is not heard." So it's saying day unto day. When it's saying day unto day, every day that the sun rises in the east is telling us this is the starting point of a brand new day. Like the scripture says, great is his faithfulness, his mercies are renewed each morning, great is his faithfulness. So every biblical day starts at the rising of the sun. When it says night unto night showeth knowledge, well, the knowledge that the moon is showing, she's showing that she is a faithful witness in heaven, and she's announcing that that the Sabbath is in fact taking place. So this is what the luminaries are created for, from the inception, from creation, right? So so I just want to show this too, because I've showed the first the first month, the second and the third month being the 15th day. We would have to conclude that the fourth and the fifth month was also the 15th day of those respective months as well. And like I said, today is the 15th day of the sixth biblical month. So I just want to show this. I'm gonna go into so when you look in the scripture, unleavened bread is exactly 6 months prior to the Feast of Tabernacles. So when we go into scripture, 5 months later, which is the Feast of Purim, for those that recognize and keep Purim, 5 months later, Purim shows and proves as well that the 15th day is also a full moon. Esther chapter 9, and I'm going to start at verse 18. And it says, "But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day of the same month, they rested and made it a day of fasting and gladness, of feasting and gladness, feasting and gladness." So when it says right here on the 13th day, this is talking about the month of Adar. So that we know that the month of Adar, the 13th day, that is the feast of Nicanor, for those that acknowledge that out of the Maccabees. So it says that as far as Purim is concerned, it takes place on the 14th day as well as the 15th day. And it says of the 15th day, on the 15th day of the same month, they rested and made a day of feasting and gladness. So the 15th day of every biblical month is a Sabbath, and this is showing the consistency of the calendar of the Most High. Genesis 1:14, Luni-Solar. We showed for 6 months. Well, actually, we showed the entire year, which is 12 months as far as the moon is concerned. that the 15th day of every biblical month has to be the 15th under a full moon. It's showing in scripture, very consistent. So there's no other way to discredit that, right? So with that being said, I just wanted to do this early morning edification. Hadn't done one in a while. And again, I want to say Shabbat Shalom to everybody keeping the Sabbath today, according to the only calendar, the Most High, which is Genesis 1:14, which is a Luni-Solar calendar. Today is the 15th day. And as Hamashiach said, is it but 12 hours in a day? Absolutely. The light portion of the day. And Exodus chapter 12 showed that, because it said that the children of Israel went out of Egypt on the self-same day. It said of that, it is a night to be much observed. So evening simply means sunset, and it's immediately followed by 12 hours of darkness called night. And so this evening, when the sun sets, the confirmation that we are keeping the Sabbath according to scripture, according to what I just read, we will be under a full moon. So as like I said, we're exactly a month away from the Feast of Tabernacle, and also from the our fall feast. But specifically talking about the Feast of Tabernacles, and we're exactly a month away. So the confirmation that we are keeping the Feast of Tabernacles correctly is that on the first night, because it says, Leviticus 23, Leviticus 23 and verse 6, it says in Leviticus 23 and verse 34, and it says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of the 7th month shall be a feast of tabernacles for 7 days unto Yahuwah. On the first day it shall be a holy convocation, you shall do no servile work." Verse 36, 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah. On the 8th day it shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah. In it it shall be a solemn assembly, and you shall do no servile work. So the 15th day is a solemn assembly. And I drop down to verse 39. It says, "Also in the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep a feast unto Yahuwah 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath," meaning the 15th day, which is under a full moon. So that is the confirmation that you are keeping the feast according to scripture, is that the first night that you're sleeping in the tent, when you look up, you must be under a full moon. If you are not under the full moon, you have not kept the Feast of Tabernacles correctly. And if you've never been under a full moon on the first day of Tabernacles, unfortunately, according to scripture, you have never kept the Feast of Tabernacles correctly according to scripture. That's not according to me, that's according to what I'm reading, and I'm showing the consistency of the calendar of the Most High, showing for without a doubt that the 15th day, which is the second Sabbath of every biblical month, is in fact the 15th day, and it's confirmed by the full moon. And like I read in Psalms 89:37, she's a faithful witness in the Shamayim. So with that being said, I just want to say Shabbat Shalom to everybody keeping the Sabbath today. Have a blessed day. Enjoy. Get some rest in. Get some word in, and I pray that everybody grabs hold of this calendar, because this is the only way to meet the Most High at His appointed time. There's absolutely no other way to do this, and the scriptures show that the moon is a faithful witness in heaven, and shows the consistency of the calendar of the Most High, which is Genesis 1:14. So with that, I say Shalom.